So, telling data stories. Anyone know what we're talking about today? Anyone have an idea? Anyone have any stories to tell about data?
I have some.
Got somewhat of an idea. What's the guess? What you got?
It's how you use data to help you communicate the points that you're trying to get from. Usually it's for business. People.
Mhm.
Like, what's the business?
So leveraging data to communicate a business case, but then also how to create a story behind it to make it memorable. So a lot of the times we are delivering data to senior leaders, and you need them to remember the ask so they can go get buy-in from the rest of the executive leaders. And so, but sometimes we just give them too much data. So we're going to talk about that today in your groups. We're going to go through, we're going to talk about data visualization, the explore the story arc. Anyone ever heard of the story arc? You, okay. Want to elaborate a little bit more? We'll get to it.
Well, in my creative writing class,
Oh,
we have the buildup of the story. You have an opening scene, you have conflict, and you have resolution.
okay. Yes. So exactly. So we're going to talk about that story arc. We're going to talk about how to create charts and graphs and storytelling. Keep in mind, y'all, we only have an hour and a half. So this is going to be real high level. However, it seems that we have some other subject matter experts in the room that we'll be able to extract more information and connect with each other. So I definitely ask that everyone please remember to connect with each other based on names on LinkedIn. If not, drop it in the chat. For those who are virtual, we'll make sure we get those out to you as well so that you can connect too. And then determine how those data stories, how to make them sticky. What we mean by sticky? Sticky means memorable. We want to make sure they stick. So, and it's a simple formula to do, but until then, what I would like you all to do is in groups, since y'all are already in groups. And Shantae, could you break the group, the virtual team in the group as well? These are the questions I want y'all to take the next 12 minutes to have a conversation about. And let me make sure that I am not blocking. Yep, group discussion. What data do you present? What is the preferred method of presenting the data, charts, graphs, etc.? And then what have you done to make the data come to life and be more interesting? So let's have 12 minutes, have a conversation about that virtually, 2 groups or something like that. We'll come back. Those who are virtual, identify a speaker for your group so that way y'all can report out when we bring you back to the main room. Any questions? Shante?
No, I have the room set up. I'm ready to open them.
Okay, move forward. Let's go. Let's have this conversation and take notes. 12 minutes starting now.
All right, everyone, I'm going to transition you into the breakout rooms.
One moment, I see that.
How did you know present?
Right.
I have you, Polly. Just 1 second. You two.
I don't do a whole
There she goes.
lot. Do it's even past. It's been things like how many people are taking a course. You know, how many people have taken it before. Not grand storytelling, which is part of the problem. Well, and Blair didn't do a whole lot of this, which I think would have helped to have more graphs, which is kind of why I'm here, to be able to learn something that I didn't really learn in that.
Okay.
I would say, not necessarily maybe,
Mm-hmm.
specific data depending on, you need to know your audience.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm gonna say the data that's within, I'm gonna call it their love language, so you need to extract that information that's important to
To
your
them.
audience. Yeah. So it could be, depending on what it is, that your proposal is, like, okay, we have this course and we have 300 people in our company, but only 20 people have engaged.
Mm-hmm.
So be part of it, but then again, you're making it, okay, here's the big number.
Yeah.
This is the percentage, or this is the number, who have engaged in it, so. Moving forward, what do we do?
Right, yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important to. Know what the audience wants.
Know what the audience.
Yeah,
um,
is it money? Is it participation? Is it, hey, we want to get this award, we have to have this certain number. So,
Taking to the next level,
Yeah.
going with your stakeholders,
yeah,
the decision maker.
right, absolutely,
Sometimes that audience and the decision maker are not aligned,
yeah, that's very true.
and so the
Mhm.
audience in which you want to deliver things to. But the stakeholders, person that holds the purse strings.
I was gonna say, in my past history as a salesperson, it's like you wanna talk to the person who writes the check.
Yes,
So that's, what we need to know our audience, if that's the person who writes the check, I don't need to talk to the manager, I need to talk. You have the checkbook, no, I need to talk to that person.
So now that you know the audience, now you know how to craft the message.
Yeah.
And so,
you have your goal. I know what your goal, is. Have a clear goal. And your graphics. And your data that you're gathering need to all support that goal.
anyone else, any data that they're currently working? with?
Similar to her, I think just mentioned some, satisfaction,
Mhm.
I never could get the highest level of her factor. Just enough to follow up maybe 2 months later to see if people are actually changing their behavior. As a result of the plan, so. This basic. Did you like to say that you learned something from? We don't do pre and post testing. Adults don't.
Oh, so like to be tested, that's true.
You collect like net promoter score?
Would say that
Your net promoter score?
no.
That's actually really simple if you want to start, reading, so it's a 0 to 10
Mhm.
scale. And at the end of the training, you ask them, like, would you recommend them? How well would you recommend them? And then 9 and 10 are considered promoter. And then, the 7 and 6, 7 things are neutral.
Neutrals and then
And then-
everything else.
Everything else is a negative. And it's interesting because you don't expect that, right? But you keep the 9s and 10s and subtract off with the Ys and unders, and that's what's called your NPS, that promoter score. And so that's a good gauge of if you're trying to compare course to course to course, or even instructors or outside people that we're bringing in, like how well is that training?
So the company I work for right now, actually looked at I did my first training delivery with them on presentation skills 2 weeks ago. And I actually got the eval results, and they actually have the net promoter score built into the eval. And so, and, I was on the higher end. I think I got like, I'm in a 9. So I was like, oh, they recommend this course. I was really excited. And so, but it was really nice to see the metrics. Now, eval is still too long, 20 questions. I wouldn't complete that,
Wow,
but we have a good group. They all, complete,
wow,
mainly because I gave them the class.
Yeah.
I wouldn't let them go into it.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, I'm waiting. I'm just looking for the numbers to hit on this thing. You're, oh, we had 42. Got you. There you go. Now y'all.
or is it?
Oh, it's electronic.
Yeah.
It's electronic.
Have them in the-
But I can actually see when you complete it. And so I was just waiting for the certain number. Yeah. I figured out the best way to get feedback is.
I ask my clients, like, when they're done, coaching with me, I ask them.
Right there.
Have the NPS, and I ask them, what did they like to do, and what was the recommendation?
Okay, any other data? What else is up here? Okay, any preferred methods for presenting data? Charts? Graphs?
I've done charts and graphs, and my old company, we had, our data analyst would put a lot of that data points into stuff, so we could just go in there and say, I want to see this thing,
Mhm.
and narrow it down, and then make it pretty. And I would present that, so be it that it was a bar chart, or a pie chart, or
Mhm.
graphs, whatever.
Okay,
But I've even noticed a lot of places, like even in the ATD and the magazine,
Mhm.
the charts they use now are a lot more colorful. They're, you know, they have,
Color, gotcha.
you know, it's not just a round pie chart now. It's, you know, I don't know, different shapes or different.
Different shapes, different colors. Now also sometimes colors have meaning.
Mhm.
So now you gotta go and look at the legend,
Yeah.
figure out exactly what am I looking at?
Yeah.
You know, what does this mean? Because they're getting a little bit more creative to
Yeah.
really grab people's attention. We're gonna talk about that as well.
Yeah.
And then.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, good. So,
Quick overview of everything.
mhm.
And then, what have you done to bring it?
Tell us. Yeah, no. We're in book club right now. We're reading what's it called? The Power of Storytelling. And so it's really gotten me started to think about telling more stories, people's stories, you
Mhm.
know, of how, this isn't just data, this is, you know, here's a story of a person. So if it's somebody or something you can identify with, it makes it a lot more real, a lot more alive
Mhm.
than just, hey, look, you know, 33% now like this, as opposed to 23 last time. Nobody cares about that, but
Mhm.
when you can give a person a story on why they like it, how it changed their life, that makes it real.
Makes it. See, and I think that's the key point too, is how do we make it real so that it sticks?
Yeah.
So that ultimately we get what we want,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Most of the time it's funding, sometimes it's support.
Yeah.
And so it really is understanding what that key need is there. And so, and then the data itself is a lot, there's a lot of data, we're gonna go through a lot of data, and focal points and stuff like that too. Taylor, what kind of data does college students deal with these days? I told you.
Yeah.
Everything, research, you need to know the history behind your class, you need to know why it's there on the campus, you need to know how to use it when you graduate. You research a lot.
Research. And so, anybody ever, anyone work for the CDC? Ah, I get it.
Yeah.
And so, have you been to it? Well, I know you've been to y'all's presentation. I've sat through some CDC presentations. It's a lot. Oh, they are.
Yeah, we just had a conference, we call it Epidemic Intelligence Service,
Mhm.
and they had helped me engage people working with them to tell stories.
Ah,
They use infographics,
Mhm.
much more interesting than.
I thought that about 6 years ago.
Like they would take a people from their journal article.
Yeah.
Instead of slide.
And write it all out, right?
Mhm.
As seen in June of 1940.
And then they're gonna read it to you now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's horrible. It's horrible to write a research. I had did some research in college like that, or graduate school, and oh my God, it was killing us. It was so boring, and we're the ones writing it, you know?
I could have told a story.
You know? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm curious, what metrics do you all look at in like talent development?
Well, I do a lot of the personality research, like you do, you know, like the DISC personality, you know, or the MBTI or a lot of those kind of things. And they have graphs that or pie charts or whatever that kind of illustrate that sort of. So,
When you're talking
So-
metrics, you're talking about what are we evaluating?
Metric.
oh, yeah,
Measure-
that, like.
What are we
okay.
measuring KPIs and stuff? That goes from, of course, attendance,
Yeah.
net promoter score on that piece, feedback, feedback on the instructor, whether it's presenting.
Okay.
How does this content relate to your job?
Mhm.
You know, so scaling on 1 to a 10.
Okay.
And so 1 being it's not relevant, 10 being that it is highly relevant.
Mhm,
What else is there? Is this something that you can use immediately?
mhm.
Okay.
So, you know, are you able to apply this right now? So, or is it, you know, because sometimes you're enrolled in a class that you're not even, you don't even have the autonomy or the ability to even apply the concept. So, you know, and we all know how knowledge dies when you're not able to practice. So, you know, really looking at that. So we do ask that question, do you have the to practice with it? And so, and really being able to see whether or not that person does, because if they don't, then I'm gonna see you again in 6 months. Because you're gonna end up retaking. What else is there? Anyone else? Any other metrics?
Well, like the instructor skill. I think you kind of mentioned that,
Mhm.
to the instructor. Speak clearly, the instructor, you know, meet the goals of the course.
Mhm. The learning
So,
objectives,
Yeah, the
So,
learning objectives.
were you engaged?
Yeah.
And so engagement is very key these days, right? So everyone wants engagement. Nobody wants to pay for the engagement, but everybody wants the engagement component. So, you know, they're literally CEOs are looking and seeing that if we're gonna put and invest all this money into whether it's an LMS or e-learning or whatnot, they're checking to see if there is engagement. Another question, I was working with another client of mine and they're about to make this investment in they've made this investment in an LMS. And they have on-demand learning and they built out custom journeys and they have all these things here. No one's using LMS.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're dropping thousands every year into this learning management system. And now they're trying to figure out how do we get people to just click. So they're coming back.
Yeah.
How do we get people to click, to join, to consume the content? It's there. So.
Same thing with LinkedIn Learning.
Mhm.
We offered it to leaders and every month, like, how many leaders are using it? They didn't want to put any money into marketing it. But, you know, they wanted people to use it. And well, if they don't know about it, how are they gonna use it? So that's the story to tell. Yeah. Yeah. So and that's where telling that, making that data come to life. It's like, hey, waste this money, or are you gonna enhance it and let us? The why. Yeah, the why. Exactly.
So even with that, we can talk about it as everybody else join back. They'll be back in about less than 30 seconds. And so that you're spending all that money, so the C-suite is looking at, okay, hey, how are they utilizing the tool? We're making the investment. Then come to find it or not. So I'm doing some research right now on socializing learning. So some people might call it, there's research on nudging. You know, so, you know, and we get nudged every day. You know, text messages, how many times you subscribe to something and you get the little
Yeah. All day long.
all day, right? So you have all this right here, so they're calling that nudging. How do we nudge and keep people there? Now there's a strategy behind the nudge, what to nudge, when to nudge, how to nudge. You know, for me, I'm calling that notifications. How many times do I need to send this person a notification about this, that, or no? But I'm finding that we can take our marketing concepts that we use to market externally and actually apply them as well. And it not be a nuisance to people, because sometimes that nudge or that notification,
Yeah.
is actually what you need. It's like, oh, wait, I forgot all about that.
Yeah.
And especially when you know exactly when to send it.
But not too much.
Hi, everyone. Are y'all back?
We are back.
We are back.
We had a great discussion in the room that I was in. I hope the other room had a good discussion also. In regards to your questions. Good. I got thumbs up from Tracy, or from Kelly. I knew a Kelly Tracy. I was like, is it the Kelly Tracy? No, not the same one. Small world.
There's another me out there, but everyone calls her Tracy too.
Tracy's of the world. Who was the speaker for the first group?
Can we even decide that, you guys?
I can go ahead because I took notes.
Okay, go ahead.
So what data you present? So from Jen, she leads a evaluation team and they create exit tickets for new hire training. So her team was the first team to create evaluations. No evaluations existed prior. So that's the data that she's presenting. And she's using ChatGPT to do that. And very interesting how Chat GPT, once you feed the data into that system, it can create a story. So Jen was telling us about how they edited the story, added character names to the story, kind of give life to the data. So that was pretty cool. For Jasmine, again, Jasmine also does new hire evaluation, and currently she's working with PowerPoint. So she's looking for ways to jazz that up. And Jake works with course completions for soft skill and software training. And he is using pivot tables right now. So his pivot tables are sent out to his staff. They can play with the data. They come back together and they meet about the data that was created. And last but not least, Kelly, she works for the federal government. So they use ChatGPT also, but they feed in general information and then utilize the data from there. I think I got everyone. Am I accurate, guys?
Thank you. Group
Nailed it.
one.
All right.
Nailed it. Group two. Group two.
That was us. We mostly talked about the second and third questions. Let's see, preferred method. Polly mentioned that she's thinking and ideating a lot about how to go beyond graphs and charts to present in a more engaging way. Maybe creating animated graphs, infographics. Rhonda talked about how a lot of the data she has to present, she is required to put in a PowerPoint format. And so she tries to use a mix of infographics, smart art, things like that. And Rhonda and Sarah both talked about using stories a lot to go along with the data, whether it's telling stories of specific learners or specific people being impacted by the program to sort of give a face to the numbers. Rhonda also mentioned turning evaluation data into like giving it in a more narrative story way to talk about the trends in it. And I'm in a new position where there's like, I'm on a team of 2 and there's hardly any data being collected. So I just want some data to figure out what to do with.
I just want to collect the data. I just want to collect the data. You know, where do I start? Hopefully someone can give you an idea where to start. What about the in-person team? Who's going to speak for y'all? We're all looking back.
We talked about, like our first question, what data do we want to present? And first of all, we want to know who our audience is. So we can kind of figure out how that story is designed, be able to speak that language to whatever the group is. And one of the things, I guess from my sales background is like understanding like a needs analysis, understanding the need. And the other side of that is like, who's holding the check? So am I talking to the right person? So talked about, got from Neil, make sure we're talking to the stakeholder because that's the person who we want to craft that story to be able to speak to. We also talked about when we're gathering data, what data are we gathering? So we talked about net promoter net promoter scores, to be able to talk about that. I'm going to say that specific course or that instructor or facilitator to present. You know, we have high scores or we have low scores. What are we going to do to turn it around, or what do we need to do to continue on this path? And telling the story, we want to make sure the story is real, relatable, and that we're making sure that in that story we're talking about the why. Why are we doing this? The why is what we want to be able to accomplish. Make it as in our here in the questions that we want to make it real, relatable, and
Right. Thank you for that recap on all of you all, and really tell you the truth. Data really matters about the top who we are presenting to, but it was brought up as far as about how we evaluate our learning experiences, and so because that all comes into play into the story, that data, and how to synthesize that. So as we continue to go on, Y'all see this screen here? I gotta minimize y'all so the group here is. I'm gonna bring y'all back. It says, what is this telling you? It won't go away.
The percent of nutritionists who say a food is healthy.
Mhm. Stuff
Say
at the
that
top
again?
is good, stuff at the bottom, not good for you,
Oh, the
but may be
percent.
good tasting to you.
But it's also, and I'm not sure it's telling a clear story, but
Mm,
part of the story is the comparison between nutritionists and Americans, just general Americans.
All American.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's telling a story that I think there might be a gap or two here.
Yes, so the agreement between those two groups.
the story here is confusing
Yeah.
a little bit. And so everybody been in the presentation and you got everything all on one slide? You got the whole story right there from beginning to end. And when you looked at this slide, where did your focal point? Where was it?
The
In the middle.
pictures.
She was looking at the glass of wine. You know, I was looking at the pork chops.
I was looking at the beer because I might have one in my hand right now.
Oh, yeah, no, ain't no problem.
So I didn't,
Oh,
I noticed the percentage of nutritionists, but I did not notice down at the bottom till later, the percentage of all Americans. So they've got these, it's so far apart. And how did they converge? What does it mean?
trying to figure out the meaning behind it, right?
Yeah.
Right?
So the food on the street, that gray dotted line,
Mm-hmm.
the closer it is to that line, the closer the nutritionists and the people are in agreement. So the food down at the bottom, like we think frozen yogurt is healthier than what nutritionists think it is. And then
Yes,
vice versa.
and vice versa.
Hummus. So, but it is, it's not obvious, that's.
Mm-hmm. So who would be the stakeholder that we would be trying to tell a story to around? What would be the message?
There's certain.
Don't drink Coca-Cola?
Yeah.
It's not a very clear message.
Don't hire whoever created this chart. That's what I got.
I'm gonna let Jonathan know that. But no, it's a really good, it's a really good illustration of data misuse.
Yeah.
Presented, but there's no end or no goal in mind. And so one of our goals here is the narrative. Sometimes you decide that, hey, oh, y'all said it's not clear enough. We're gonna add more. We're gonna add more. Yeah, you see the other information was just added onto the screen.
This is the tinsel, the old-fashioned tinsel on the Christmas tree that got tossed in big wadded handfuls that was silver and clumped up on the branches. That's what this is now.
Mm-hmm. It's like, it's just add more, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you wasn't clear. Okay. We're gonna add more. We're gonna talk about quinoa landed and there's a superfood up here. I have no idea what a quinoa is. Is that a grain? That's a grain, right?
Quinoa's
Right.
a grain. Yep.
Yep, see?
Yeah, quinoa.
Yeah, I'm not eating quinoa. I'm down here in the rice area.
Clearly you're not the audience of this
Not meant for me.
infographic if you don't
Was
know what
not meant for
quinoa
me.
is.
Right. So, Chantel, you have anything to add over here?
I would say that looking at that particular, this slide, do the added text that they have next to all of these food groups, I'm gonna just say, does it make the presentation any clearer to you? Do you understand the data any clearer?
I think the most important thing word-wise that's on there is exactly, and I don't know who it was in the in-person audience that was talking about the relationship between, or the correlation between nutritionists and Americans, is the sentence that says foods along this line were rated equally by nutritionists and the public. That is the most important set of words to me to help clarify what is on this table and or on this chart and why it is where it is. The
Okay.
rest of it seems extraneous.
It's like extra. Okay.
So,
Do you,
go ahead.
I was gonna ask, does anybody, or Jen, if you wanna chime in, have anything that you think you would do to improve that particular slide? Knowing what you currently know.
Well, I didn't even notice the line, so I would make that at least a little bit more visually.
This
I
line
don't know what
here.
line they're talking about. It says the foods along the line.
y'all can't see
What
this line.
line?
Mhm.
I think some colorization, maybe a gradient
don't
in the
see a line.
background that goes
Okay.
from like the nutritionists versus Americans. So you can visually see that there's a difference between that. So perhaps a gradient.
Okay.
Okay, so gradients, color.
And even just removing the words off of it and making that line that some people can't see, making that line physically larger and bigger in color, and then putting it to the side to say, you know, this big red line in the middle, or blue or green or purple, means this, so that those words are off to the side and not cluttering up the rest of the chart. I mean, and I think for most things, people could just look at these pictures
Mhm.
and not need the words. So you literally could kick off most of the words. Cottage cheese might need some words. Obviously, quinoa and hummus would need some words.
Sounds
But
like you can group
otherwise-
some of those dairy products under dairy.
Right.
But really looking at your data and visualizing it different is the goal here. And so, but we're gonna go here, Shantae, you got the next slide here?
Yes, I do. And I wanted to add, Rhonda did say in the chat, create a legend. I like that idea.
Ah, see?
Yeah.
I like that, Rhonda. So your 3 principles of data stories. So controlling your gaze. So we looked at that slide. That last slide was pretty busy, right? You wanted to be able to more center that data in a way that you're controlling the gaze of the individual that you're presenting the data to. You want to also control the narrative. You want to control what message that data is giving. Okay, so when you have a stakeholder that you're presenting this data to, and we always go back to, you want more budget next year for your team. You want to grow your team. How am I going to present that information in a way and have it send the message that this is the work that we've done, and this is why I want the money, and this is why you should give it to us. Okay, and then build emotion. So build an emotion with that data. You know, capture the stakeholder in that conversation. When they're looking at that data, presented it in a way that it starts a conversation and it gets them to thinking, and then you get their buy-in.
Someone tell me the emotion that you hear and know that you see on this screen. What's the emotion? Y'all don't see no emotion?
Love,
More people love Emory.
love, like,
Right, you know, it says
Great.
2% of Atlanteans, okay, they're okay
They're,
with Emory. They're okay. But that next one, they really like. That's the emotion, but that other one, love. They love Emory. We're only using Emory because we're here, right? So we love Emory University. That's the emotion. You want to connect. You want to be able to control the gaze. So if you go back, where was your gaze? We was talking about wine. Somebody was looking at pork chops. I'm sorry, that was me. And so you were looking at the milk, all those things there. You want to be able to control the gaze. You want to make sure that it's not cluttered. The next one is you want to be able to control the narrative. So the previous chart, you wasn't able to control the narrative. Everyone had their own story. Everybody had their own interpretation. And then you want to build the emotion. When we say build, it is a slow build. You want to give them What we're saying the story, the story arc?
Yep, building up.
Build it up, right? You want to identify the problem up front. You want to create a nice, good synergy for everyone. And then you want to build on it when you're communicating to that stakeholder, how you go about doing it. Is there anything in the chat, Shante? I'm seeing.
Yep,
pieces of-
there sure is. Rhonda put a few things in the chat. So manage the cognitive load, avoid extraneous information / graphics. And Merrill's first principle.
Want to elaborate, Rhonda?
Sure. So in the L&D arena, when we think about controlling the gaze and controlling the narrative, that is managing the cognitive load for our learners. That is avoiding extraneous information and graphics on the screen so that people do not become distracted. We control the narrative by only including things that are pertinent and relevant and clear and concise for our learners. And then Merrill's first principle, that is gain the learner's attention. You know, building emotion, that's getting their attention, right? And how can we tell a story, but if we get their attention and we create that emotion and that environment and we take them on that journey so that they can hear our story and learn the purpose of whatever the information or content that we're trying to present to them.
Thank you. See, Rhonda and Shante can do this. I'm just here as a stakeholder. You know, I'm here to learn too. As you're creating and building that emotion, and you're controlling the narrative. Have you ever been to a presentation and they just had pictures? That's it. Pictures, but they were thought-provoking photos. They had a purpose. What goes on your deck, what goes in your presentation, what goes into your story and how you visualize it needs to have a purpose. It needs to be linked to something that is provoking. And when we say provoking, I am talking emotion. So sometimes you have to get vulnerable. And in order to present, you have to make sure that that person that you're talking to understands the true nature of where it is, where that emotion is coming from. You know, why are you putting 12, 48, 3 weeks of time in building a presentation, but you are not attached to it at all? Now, mind you, I'm pretty sure some of us do that all day, every day. However, but when you know you need 50 grand to get this program up and running, and so you want to make sure that when you deliver it, you're hitting the nail on the head. Any more insight from online?
No, in the chat, they're talking about book study, and I said I need to be part of this study group that everybody's reading these wonderful books in regards to instructional design and data realization. So
Rhonda has a whole book club going on Mondays. Is it on Mondays, right?
Yeah.
on
Yep.
Monday,
Mondays, yep, I just dropped the link so you can
I
register right
see it.
there.
I see it, Rhonda. Thank you.
So, welcome to ATD Greater Atlanta, where we have all the programming here, y'all. We have all the programming. And so great leaders like Rhonda putting together great things. I love it. And so definitely we're on the building emotions here. So Shante, the slide here.
So talking about controlling that gaze and kind of building off of what Rhonda was saying, you want to not put a lot of unnecessary information, graphics, data on your screen. You want to be able to draw your stakeholder directly to the main points that you're trying to drive home in your data visualizations. So on this slide here, you can see on the left-hand side, you have a chart here. So you have at the top, they've highlighted the very top bar. Okay, so it's now drawing your attention. You're not really looking at the rest of that data, right? My eye goes right to that red circle. Okay. And then you have on the left or the right-hand side, you have the map of the United States. And then that slide, they use a call out. I like call outs. I don't know if anybody here likes to use call outs when they're building any type of presentation or training resource or asset. So regardless if you're using a bold line, circle, outline, or using a call out, that's one way that you can control where your stakeholders' gaze is going and where you want to really drive home your point. in presentation of your data.
Notice that they're using color, but it's neutral. It's not so bright that it's distracting from the information. So you really want to find that balance when you're putting together and you're building the data. Now, mind you, the data is still there. However, you're trying to create a story. So you want to create around one data point, maybe a handful of data points, but you don't want to give them everything. You give them everything, you leave it up for interpretation. And then when people ask questions, you're asking questions about the one thing that you don't want them to ask questions about. Everybody ever did a presentation? Thought you nailed it, right?
Always.
Always. Go ahead, speak, Kelly. Go.
No, I'm agreeing with you. It's always, it's the one thing that is like, you're not strongest on, or you're still waiting for information on, and you're like, oh Lord, please don't let anyone ask about it. And your team says, oh, no one's going to ask about that. No one will even think of it. It's the first question that gets asked, always.
First question. But you know why they know about it? Because you gave them the data. You gave them
overshare.
the information. You overshare, and that's one of the things that we do in L&D. So for those who are interested about data and L&D data, guess what? We have it. We got all the data. We just give it to everyone and give them, and then we're mad when they don't know what we were talking about. We're like, well, you gave them too many data points. Give them one, maybe two. Guide the conversation. Anyone else want to add to this?
That is part of what, there has been some evaluation in other programs within the department I work in. And part of the issue is the interpretation of the data varies from department to department internally. So one department will say we've, provided 10,000 hours of training, where another department will say we've done 100 hours of training. It's the same number of trainings. It's just one department is counting every single head as 1 hour of training, where the other department is counting every webinar as X number of hours of training. So it really, you have to think about what you're putting out there and being consistent so that the information that is shared can be compared to the other information. Otherwise, you've just got a bunch of nonsense.
Right, so therefore, not only do you control the narrative, but you frame it as well. So what she's saying is there's a lot of data that can be interpreted, but you give the audience, you tell them how to interpret it. So if it's 1 hour of training, this is equivalent to this. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that's a really good point that Jennifer made. I wanted to comment on that, so I'll share a story.
Mhm.
I worked with a client, it was a Fortune 500 company. They came in, they had a ton of data. And they said, we don't have enough data. I looked at their data. They had plenty of data. The issue was that the data was not normalized. So what she's talking about is that different groups were using different units as far as how, and you couldn't compare from group to group. So once we cleaned up the data, all of a sudden, things started making sense. And you can compare North America to South America, to Europe, to Asia. So it's a really important point.
So normalizing the data so that everyone's on the same page. And so Rhonda, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you. So at my job, we have a problem with people trying to compare apples to oranges. And I've kind of started making sure that I can find a way to compare apples to apples. For example, I'm getting ready to present information on one of my programs, and they wanted a Q2 to Q3 comparison to show the results. Well, our Q2 is vastly different from our Q3 because Q2 for us is end of year for everybody else. So I decided to reach back to Q3 of last year of FY22 and use that data to make my comparisons with this year, because it is a more similar situation and the comparisons are more valid because of the environment and the other outside or external things that might have skewed my data it became more valid when I made a Q3 of FY22 versus a Q3 of FY23 comparison. So sometimes people are looking at trying to compare things, but they don't look at the whole picture of what went into that particular data set and that point of time that the data was captured. So that's another element that we always have to consider. Are things all the same or more similar when you're making these comparisons? And if not, then that's not the data that you need to show people as a comparison.
So our subject matter experts on data are sitting here in the room. Name again?
Oh, Glorianne,
Who said
Glorianne.
Glorianne? Yeah, so make sure y'all reach out to Glorianne. She's our data expert right here. And apparently Rhonda has a new background in data she ain't told nobody about.
Look, it's just my job. They drilling it into me, y'all. I keep trying to run away from the data, but they keep chasing me. That's why I'm here.
So, but thank you. Here, so we're gonna tell y'all a story about a podcast. You know, back in 2018, we started a podcast. I really not start a podcast more. This is a fictitious story made up by ChatGPT. And we were looking to grow our audience. And what does this chart show you? You see growth, right? I'm between 300 to 400. Does it tell a story? Kind of flat, not the graph, the story. You know, we had a podcast in 2019. That's all it tells, right? So how do we make this more exciting?
Well, what happened in August and September, because there was a,
What happened in August and September right here? Okay.
Rhonda
So,
says
someone
in
else
the chat, Rhonda says it's only 2D.
Okay. All in too deep. So when we're looking at creating this story, you start back in 2018 when you had the idea about creating the podcast. So back in 2018, we had an idea, we had a goal of about 300 to 400 listeners or downloads. That's what they do in podcasting, download. We want about 300 to 400 downloads per month. We reached it. It was getting there. That's what January, February, and March was about. So we decided to invest in some advertising on LinkedIn because we thought that that would actually help in growing that audience that downloads these. So as you can see, LinkedIn advertising started in April. And we're still in between that 300 and 400 download mark. Not really doing anything for us, right? So what's the goal here? We're trying to grow we're trying to get these downloads up so that we can get more money. We can do our podcast. Anybody want to be on a podcast with me? No? Volunteers? There you go. Come on now. I'm fun. I really am. So we want more downloads. However, we decided that, hey, maybe someone recommended and said, maybe LinkedIn is not the place where you should be investing dollars. Maybe we should be looking at Instagram. Took the money, invested in Instagram, people were skeptical. Wasn't sure if it was gonna work. However, as you can see, when we made the investment, soared. We went from 300 to 400, now we're up in the 4 to 5, and it's continuing to rise. Do I have a good enough story now to ask for $7,000, $10,000 in advertising to go into Instagram? Did all that with just showing this here in less than a minute. Now, could have went back and just showed you the chart again and said, I need $7,000 and invest in Instagram. What the stakeholders gonna tell me?
No.
You want to spend $7,000 on advertising on Instagram? We don't even have Instagram. But now we have data. The data shows a story. We tried LinkedIn. That's where most of our clients are. That's where most of our customer base is not working. We're still leveling flat. However, we decided to try something new and seeing that that actually worked. So now when you're asking for something, you're creating that story, you're building it. and you're showing them the case without overwhelming them with more data than they need. So if you were to say that, hey, we had another line up here and you said, well, we tried LinkedIn, Facebook, now you got all the social media. You only need one. You need a little bad one, like, oh, this didn't work over here. And then you need the one that does. 2 data points. And a line graph. Jonathan tells the story a lot better, I promise you. But since he improv him right now, we're gonna y'all stuff with me. Conte, you have anything to add?
I was gonna say you built the emotion as you told the story. So with you building a narrative, creating that storyline for just really a graph with one simple set of data on it, you drew me in. I don't know about anybody else, but draws you into the story so you better understand what you're looking at. Because otherwise, how would you present that as a facilitator? And I can start off with me, because I know before understanding what data is, I would just say, well, you see where we were at the start here in January, and now look at where we are in December, and you've seen an increase. And that's what most facilitators would do because they don't understand the data. But by understanding those components and understanding those 3 points, how to build that narrative, how to build the emotion, which Neil did, then you better understand what you're looking at, and you have a higher chance, of course, to get a buy-in if you're looking for more money for, in this case, advertising.
More money. This also goes for stakeholder support. And so right now, one of my roles, I've been asked to build out a coaching program for managers, but they ain't gave me no budget. And I said, you do know who you're talking to, right? One thing I know how to do is spend money. I do it very well. Great. I was like, I need a budget. I need you to give me guidelines. And so they said, well, give us the data. I said, oh, I gotta go and do research. However, I have vendors lined up. And I'm gonna create the story on the impact of creating this coaching program for managers and how we're gonna go about doing, where we're gonna start. You know, first it starts with analyzing the data. What are we currently doing to provide coaching? Are we utilizing other vendors? And so what is the success rates of that? So we're gonna know, you wanna go through all the data that you currently have, extrapolate the information that's most important. Because that's the information that you're gonna use to create the story that you're gonna leverage in order to get whatever you need approved. It is not about sharing all the information that you gather. You know how much information I've gathered in the last 3 months on coaching in this organization? A lot of information. But it's not, oh, I'm not gonna give them all of it. I might not get it. And I wanna get it approved. I like building programs, just so y'all, on the back end, strategy part, the implementation piece, now I don't know. No, that's what. Anyway. Is here. How did I control the narrative? How did I build emotion? So my question to you all, how do you control the narrative in your day-to-day? And how do you build the emotion when you're looking at data? Anyone working on a project right now that you have a lot of data, or in Kelly's sense, not enough data? Talking Kelly Tracy. Hey, Kelly. So anyone got any ideas on how she can gather more data? Anybody have any ideas on how they can create a story with the data that they currently have?
I have an idea how she can collect.
Okay, yes. Let's solve a problem right now.
Okay.
You listening, Kelly?
So, one of the reports that we run, you can run off Harrison.
Mhm.
It's called the Engagement and Employment Expectation Report. And it will break down what people are looking for, what matters more to them. They sort by preference. Is it pay, the opportunity for advancement? Is it work-life balance? And one of the items is how much do they want to develop? How much do they value development? So those are the folks that, especially, and it will give you a score between what they're looking for development and how satisfied they are with the current development opportunities they've had. So that, if you're looking for data, that's a great way to get it, because it will show you who wants development.
Who wants development?
Yeah.
So it's an engagement survey.
It's called, it's an engagement and employee expectations.
Okay. Kelly, does that help?
That might, I'll definitely look into it. I'm I'm working in the church world and have like a very distributed audience of learners who are in very different positions. And so it's all a little fuzzy, but I will definitely take a look at that and at least get some ideas for things to ask. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So Shante,
I don't have any data that I'm currently working with, but I can tell you a story of data that I've dealt with in the past. So in my prior role, I worked for the Blues, and I was started out as a trainer, of course, level 1 trainer. And we got a new VP in, and we had never evaluated data before. We were about smile sheets, level 1, that was it. And he came in as an experienced executive and he said, I want the data. I want you to prove to me what you're doing every day besides just facilitating a class. What type of impact are you making on our internal stakeholders? So, and we consider them our customers. So I trained a specific area of the company. And luckily for me, my data was a little bit easier because it fed into a recovery, a savings and recovery goal. So actually a money goal they had to hit every single year in that department. So I was able to take the time, backtrack. I did similar to what they did here on that slide about the podcast. I didn't start with the year that I was in. I actually backtracked it 2 years to before I even trained that particular department. And I took what savings and recovery goals that they had achieved in prior years and then evaluated it against my years of being a facilitator for that course and evaluated the differences between how much they saved or recovered in prior years comparison to my years, for lack of a better phrase. So it gave a total picture of the impact of me as a facilitator. What did my training have an impact on? And then it wasn't simply a money goal that they hit. It also meant that the people coming out of my training were better trained. They were able to go ahead and take on projects sooner than prior new hire classes, because I trained all new hires. And they were able to take on duties more quicker than people that had been there a little bit longer because they had a little bit more education, because I was an SME in that area. So that was my experience with data, my first experience with data, and understanding how I can have an impact as an individual on a department level goal.
thank you for sharing. Thank you. So now we're going to talk about this story arc that we were talking about so much as well. So, components of a story. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end. That's all the story is, a beginning, a middle, and an end. Who can create a story right now? Think of the data you present. How could you turn it into an arc? Anyone has a problem?
Okay, I think I can come up with something.
Oh, you think so, Rhonda? Go
I
ahead.
think so. It's because it's kind of what I'm working on right now. So the Advancing Proficiency Program was first launched in March of 2022. It was intended to train 2,000 associates in various service and implementation roles. After 1 year of being made available, only 20% of learners had consumed any of the Advancing Proficiency content. This results in implementation times taking twice as long as the desired rate of completion for those types of projects. With the training program that we have actually created, we will chart 12-month journey for all associates to follow, completing a certain amount of courses in 3, 6, 9, and 12-month increments. This should allow an increase in consumption of Advancing Proficiency content by 45 to 60% within the next fiscal year, ultimately reducing the time of implementation for our clients by 45%. Okay, that's my story.
That's your story.
Story.
I like the story. It had a beginning. She painted a picture. She identified the conflict, the challenge. She even gave resolution and a solution, but then also additional data of what the impact will be. Could you see the chart as she was describing it? Could you see the data? People like numbers for some reason, you know, these 20%. This seems like a 40% increase. It's like, oh, that sounds so nice. I want to give you money right now. So that's some encouragement right now. I don't got the money to give you though for what you're trying to do, but you know. Anyone else? Anybody else been able to create this story? This story, you have the data, but the goal is to identify the pieces that relate to the ask at the end. And really you're trying to identify the why. Why are we doing this? What is the emotion? And for most of us, we know what the emotion is. C-suite wants, most of the time, this money-based. They want to know that the investment that they're making is having a return, that people are getting what they need. And so they want to make sure they're building skills for the future and for the present. They want to make sure that employees are engaged and they're happy. And so they want you to be able to take that data and give it to them. Hands down, I promise you right now, the C-suite wants the streamlined version. They want the streamlined version and they want to know that you are capable of delivering what you say that you're doing. They want to believe in you. But if you come up and give them the food diet, the food piece, the scattered brain, and then they got to figure out what you're trying to do and ask for, does that strive for confidence that they're going to get the end results? This is going to be able to give them the end results that they're looking for. This is how they can hold you accountable. This is how you can hold them accountable for what they agreed upon as well. So with that, anyone has any feedback? Hey, anyone else online?
I just want to say, listening to Rhonda's story, you have to know, you have to be able to speak the language of your management, C-suite, whoever it is, whoever your audience is, you need to be able to speak their language. And Rhonda's story was like, reduce implementation time by blah, blah, blah. So that is going to make certain people very, very happy in management because implementation time was too long. So you have to be able to speak their language. Some people want stories where some people just give me the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what the numbers are and what they mean, and that's all I want. Where some people want more of, I think about this because I've done a lot of work with county elected officials, and the idea that they want stories.
Mm-hmm.
They want to hear your stories. They don't care about numbers as much locally. They want to know how what they do is impacting the community. So the same thing is true here with data, sharing it in a way that speaks to your audience.
Speaks to your audience, but also keep in mind, all of this is wrapped around us humans. How is the data going to impact the humans in my organization in a positive way? How is this going to provide them the support, the resources, the tools? How is that going to save the organization money so we can reinvest into? And you're correct about making sure that we know the terminology and understand the language, because it varies per industry. If you was to put me in a manufacturing plant, I promise you me talking about leadership and development is not going to land. Not, they're gonna look at you like, they're gonna look at me like, hold on, tell me how. But if I go in there and tell them how I can make their production line move faster by investing in their employees and encouraging them on these things here. We talk about emotional intelligence and how does that in EQ translate to a better manager being able to maintain and retain the employees they have. Now you have their attention. So we, as learning and development professionals, have to be able to translate the data to our stakeholders so that they care. And I believe sometimes we get caught up in the fact that we're used to talking the language to ourselves, but forget that the people that are gonna approve it, they don't speak L&D.
So my background, I come from research and development. I did commercialization for a specialty chemical company. I'm used to having to present projects. And one thing that I like to share, really one of my passions, why I'm doing what I'm doing now is, I see how much time and effort the higher ups put in towards approving capital projects, right? There's a capital plan, usually it's a 5-year plan. And because equipment needs to be replaced eventually, and you hear people say, people are our greatest asset, right? And they literally are. I mean, most companies, the bulk of their expenditures on the people, but they don't plan as well for the people side as they do for their capital expenditure. So if you can use that language with them and say, hey, think about how much time you spend reviewing capital projects, approving capital projects, planning for capital projects. We need to spend that equivalent amount of time on our people, because if we really believe they're our greatest asset, let's plan ahead for what the business needs and how it needs to grow. So I wanted to share that because I really, I'm a bit of an oddball, right? I'm a chemical engineer by training, but I've always been interested. Like the reason I love working with people, I love working with teams. Like that's my passion, is leadership and teamwork. And so this is some of the language that hopefully can translate to that C-suite when you're trying to pitch the talent development, the projects.
I'm so glad I'm recording this. You literally, it's one of the things that I struggle with all the time, is that we spend so much time and money on everything else, but we're willing to let our people walk out the door. And we spend a lot of time investing in them, and then they leave. And then when you find out why they leave, it's like, man. And so, you're right. You put in the time and energy, so you should be really looking to retain. And so you will save so much. What is it? Almost 40,000 that you spend on recruiting an employee right now? One. That's 40 minimum. That's one. And so every time, 40,000, they leave. That's it. There goes minimum. Now you got to think about, okay, now I have to go and build that talent all over again. And talent doesn't just leave out the door, so does the institutional knowledge, the relationships that were built, the ease of being able to get projects done, or understanding that, hey, I can pass something on. Now I have to get to know a whole new person over again. So really pay attention to those things too, because as we're leading these projects, bring it back to the human element. You're making this investment in your people because, hey, the people are the ones that are going to be here. So I was on a call today, and people were saying, oh, I've been with the company 26 years. I said, where is this? Where are y'all located again? I ain't never heard 26 years, 22 years, 16 years. I was like, oh, wow. So really thinking about that, if you want that type of longevity, and so the company is making the investment in the employees. So with that, I believe we have come to an end. Any feedback? Thank you. So I would like to add and point out that this program is sponsored by ATD and the Best Workplace and Emory Continuing Education. And so we're here as a resource to support any and everyone. We're going to send out the information with the CEUs. But we definitely encourage everyone, no matter where you are in the world, to join our chapter. We have a virtual chapter. I want y'all to come and participate in the workshops and programs. We are running these programs like this monthly to the end of the year. So definitely look on the calendar for that. The L&D meetups are strictly networking, where you can meet new people throughout the city. These are in person for those who are virtual. So please join those if there's one close to your area. They're free. There will be a handful of them where a sponsor is going to probably come in. Ezra is the sponsor for those, And they're gonna choose about 4 to 5 to actually come and show up, and we might shift some of those from breakfasts to after hour cocktails, drinks, whatnot. And so we'll update the calendar and let y'all know about those. But if there are other areas that we're not even in, but there, we believe there's a larger community of L&D professionals, send us an email. Just send us an email, and definitely volunteer. Volunteer to be a host, and the hosting is easy. It's just show up, meet people, engage. We're not asking for too much when it comes to the L&D meetups. And then the other thing I like to encourage, if you have a program idea that you want to use, if you are interested in facilitating or virtual facilitating or co-hosting or something like that, we here at the Best Workplace will help and support. If you're looking to build your brand and get out there or test out a new market, even with instructional design, we can support in that aspect as well. I know people are looking to build portfolios. Why not? We're here that, and then Emory also is here. Emory actually hires some of the people from the chapter to facilitate some of their continuing education programs too. So for those who don't know Jeffrey Alejandro, please blow him up. He's in the chapter. He's also the chairperson for the ACE conference. Speaking of, we're looking for speakers for ACE. Anyone want to speak for the ACE conference, October 4th and 5th this year? So, want to speak?
Sure.
Yes. Right, yeah, those who got knowledge, Rhonda, hopefully you speaking too, to a virtual one. Anyone out there definitely want to speak, though, on the website, atdatlanta.org, you can go to the ACE conference and you can submit to speak right there. I believe by the end of July, early August, we'll know who the speakers are. And that is the end of the workshop. Thank you all for joining.